Hello, I am Shane Brinkman-Davis-Dellamore, and this is Code and Optimism, a show where I explore how to solve problems faster with software. Today, we're continuing our series on the nature of modules and how to design good ones. And we're going to focus on the first of the 5 essential elements, purpose. Now, you probably have noticed that I have attached sort of ancient Chinese philosophy elements to each of these 5. It's just kind of for fun, and it's just a loose way of just thinking about them. But I attached fire to purpose, and I think it's fairly straightforward. It's the fire in the belly sort of concept. This is the motivation for the module's existence. It's the fire that created the module. It's the reason why it exists. So take that as you will. All right, so why purpose? Why is purpose an essential element? The main thing is that well-defined purpose is going to guide all the other aspects of your modular design. It is going to help you to answer all of the questions down the road. And most importantly, there's 2 big questions. The question of, should something be inside the module or not inside the module? And what is the bare minimum essential interface necessary to make this module function? It is very easy, as with all things, to overcomplicate your module, over-engineer it, put too much in it, keep adding more things. A really well-defined purpose for your module will help you say when things should be part of the module and when they clearly should not be part of the module. This is particularly helpful when you're working in teams and there's lots of debates about what should be done. Agreeing on a clear purpose will help everybody be on the same page about what this module does and what this module doesn't do. So there are many aspects of what makes a purpose statement for a module good, and I think you should consider yourself coming up with essentially like an elevator pitch, and it should be like a 1 to 2 sentence statement about your module's purpose. It should be that quick to convey, and it should be that concise and clear. So it should be focused, it should be simple and clear and narrow. Perhaps of all those, the most emphasized one is narrow. Another interesting thing is it should be motivational. Like, it should be exciting to think about this module. It should be compelling, exciting, satisfying. This may seem a little silly, but a well-defined modular purpose will feel good. It'll feel like, oh, this is right. And it will make it fun to work on that module because it'll avoid ambiguities. And ambiguities can be sometimes where software gets a little less fun to work on. Your purpose should be singular and exclusive. And this is the single responsibility principle, which many of you may be aware of. But the single responsibility principle has 2 halves. I want to make sure that we get both of them in. Both it should have a single responsibility in the sense that it should not have multiple different responsibilities. And it should also be exclusive in that no other module's responsibility should overlap with your module. So you want to segment your task into multiple different modules. They should be fully exclusive what their responsibilities are, and each one should be singular. And if you do that, that is a good litmus test of whether or not you've got a good modular purpose. I'm going to use the word essential here. This is a bit of a throwback to my earlier blogging days. I still have this blog, which I haven't updated in forever, but it's essenceandartifact.com. And I spent a lot of time thinking about what are essential solutions, sort of in the Platonic ideal of essential, versus artifact or artificial solutions. And these are a couple of the traits that I have landed on for essential solutions to problems. Timeless and maximally applicable. Timeless in the sense that if we go a decade into the future, maybe even 2, your module should still hold up. It should be for these set of requirements and this purpose. It should be the right thing, even a decade or 2 down the road. It shouldn't be overly attached to current fads, overly attached to specifically narrow technologies, although we always have to develop within a technology space. That's what it means to be timeless. Also, maximally applicable means that given all of these constraints we put around your module, it should be cranked up past 11. It should be all that can be within the very precise, narrow definitions of what it is. That's another thing that kind of makes it timeless. So if you were not maximally applicable, then there could be at some later point where someone goes, well, why doesn't it do this? That's clearly within the definition of its narrow scope, and it doesn't do that, so why not? And so someone else could then make a more timeless module that did all of that. So that's a quick summary of how you might think about evaluating if the purpose is a good description. So I'm going to just do a couple of quick concrete examples here, actually two different versions. I'm going to do sort of the general high level right here. So an example of a good module is libjpeg. It is there to encode and decode images as the JPEG format. That's it. That's its purpose. That's very precise. That's very concise. It is not libpng. It does not include other encoding formats. It's just that one. It's not MJPEG. It's not motion JPEG. It's just encoding and decoding JPEGs. Very precise. I'll also say that this, at the time, was actually pretty exciting. And this is where I want to get this concept that the purpose should have a little fire in your belly. It should be exciting to think about. Because when JPEGs came out, it was a revolution in the computing industry for dealing with images. Because you could finally have a high quality image at a tenth the size you could before. And given that you could have 10 times more images than you ever had before with the same storage, it was a big deal. And people were exploring all kinds of new business opportunities and just applications of computing because of what JPEG brought. And libjpeg was foundational in supporting that. And so it was an exciting library to work with. On the other hand, this is not exactly a fair comparison, it's just two random examples. Every project I've ever been on tends to start getting a lib or utils folder where all those sort of extra functions that you are reusing, so they're kind of going towards a module, get thrown. And they get all thrown together. I'll also poke a little bit at like Lodash or jQuery. Those are also actually published modules that are kind of just a collection of random functions. The problem, of course, is they don't have good cohesion. They don't have like a single responsibility. It's hard to define what's in and what's not in those collections. And to be clear, I've done this too. I think that this is something that just ends up happening on the arc of developing a module. I think utils folder is where you start. Like you start to realize a few things are getting reused multiple times, you make a function. And then you've got a couple of functions that are kind of loosely related, you throw them into a utils folder or a lib folder. And then eventually you start to realize, oh, here is the purpose. And you start to get a nice purpose idea in your mind. It slowly coalesces. And then the thing is, don't let your utils folder just keep growing forever. At some point, go back, groom it, group things up by their topics, and start honing the purpose of those modules over time. And eventually you'll have really strong modular purpose. I think utils folder is actually okay to create, but they're just a stepping stone towards making a good module. Don't just let your utils folder grow with endless more and more functions thrown into it. It becomes a management nightmare. I also wanted to do three sort of more modern concrete modules. In this case, I actually went to their various websites and grabbed their purpose statement. Like all of them have one, like right on the landing page, which is great. And I think it's a little bit educational to just do a quick survey. So React, their purpose is a JavaScript library for building user interfaces. And I'm going to give that a 9 out of 10 on the good purpose definition. The thing that it's missing is there's a lot of JavaScript libraries out there for building user interfaces. It doesn't say much about what makes React React. It doesn't say what React is doing that's different from everybody else. And what's important about that is it doesn't say what should go in the React library and what should not go in the React library. It doesn't draw any clear lines. This could go anywhere from Angular to React to jQuery. Everything fits this definition. So maybe even 9 or 10 might be a little bit high for it. It's nice and catchy, but I added a proposed slightly better definition here, which is a JavaScript UX library with reliable, predictable state. I really think that's what React's essential contribution was being able to have entirely predictable state that entirely reliably rendered the screen in a predictable way. Like you no longer get into strange state situations. I mean, you do if you get like recurring re-renders or if you start using your hooks in very strange ways. But the baseline use of the system is actually really easy to be very reliable and very predictable. And that starts to define what React does well. And that defines what should be in and what should not be in. Prisma, which our teams have been using more on projects lately. Generally, I like it. Their description is, this is all of it. I had to kind of grab the whole thing, which I think was a little bit problem right there. Their main one is next generation Node.js and TypeScript ORM. Okay, well, before I critique, let's finish reading it. And the rest says, Prisma unlocks a new level of developer experience when working with databases thanks to its intuitive data model, automated migrations, type safety, and auto-completion. I got lots of beef about this as a motivation statement. I think all these things are kind of true. Like, they're capturing it, and it's not too long. It's not terrible, but it's super muddled. I think the first one is kind of their high-level statement, and next generation is just, it's a meaningless statement. It doesn't tell us anything at all about what they're doing. The fact that it's Node and TypeScript, okay, that's a little bit of a criteria around it, although probably Node is a little bit redundant. Because if it's TypeScript, then it's going to be Node. And ORM, well, that's great. We know that it's an object representational model for your database. But I think what makes Prisma is one, it's declarative. You define your database in their schema explanation, but it's a database agnostic schema. So you can define a schema and it will mostly map to many different databases. You'll have to tweak it for individual databases, but it's declarative. You declare it, and then it generates all your necessary typing files and so forth, which is pretty cool. And I do love their automated migrations. Don't get me wrong. I think that's great, but I think this is the wrong place to call it out because really what we care about is it's declarative and it's streamlined. That's what matters about Prisma. It streamlines the process of building attaching an ORM to your database and working with it. So declarative, streamlined Node.js and TypeScript ORM is what I came up with. I gave them a 5 out of 10 to start with, and I think that mine gets closer. I'm not probably going to give a 10 out of 10 on any of mine here. I came up with them quickly, but hopefully they move a little bit better. All right, last one, just a little fun with current excitement out there is the Stable Diffusion library. And this one's a little bit weird since really what it is for the most part, it's a big chunk of data, which is the actual trained model. But it's a model nonetheless that does a thing. And so I grabbed the introductory text from the GitHub repo README, and it says Stable Diffusion is a latent text-to-image diffusion model, blah, blah, blah. They say a whole bunch of stuff here in the middle, which is kind of like thanking the Academy. We thank so-and-so for this, thank so-and-so for that. Great. I mean, definitely thank the people that supported you, but in the middle of your mission statement, it kind of muddles it. The model is relatively lightweight and runs on a GPU with at least 10 gigabytes of VRAM. I mean, I've seen worse. It describes it. In fact, I mean, I gave it 8 out of 10 when I was going through this earlier. Not entirely sure that's fair. But to me, what Stable Diffusion is, and maybe they don't even realize this, maybe this is the rest of the world taking it further than they expected, but it's the democratization of text-to-image generation. Before Stable Diffusion, and this is a fast-moving field, but there was DALL-E, and there's Midjourney, and some others, but they're sort of ivory tower, they're companies, and you can't tweak the algorithm at all. You can just add the text to get your results. They're doing interesting things, each of these different companies, but us as coders who want to work with us, we couldn't do anything with it really. And Stable Diffusion has had just radical, fast innovation going on because it's now opened up. People can do whatever they want with this model. And some really cool stuff is happening way faster than DALL-E and Midjourney are doing. So I think that the democratization is the key thing to what they're doing. And the other key thing is they're making it a lightweight model so it can run on relatively modest hardware. So I came up with the democratization of text-to-image generation with lightweight latent diffusion models. I think that captures it much more nicely, and it kind of embodies a kind of mission statement, which I think that they have. I'm not sure if they exactly have that mission statement or if the rest of the world has taken that to be the mission statement, but that is definitely what the ecosystem is now. It is the democratization of this. People are super excited about it. It's moving forward. So hopefully that gave you some sense of how to write better mission statements that do a better job at telling you what's in and what's out of your module. And also part of this purposing is to let people know who are using your module why they would use it and why they would not use it and where does it fit. In conclusion, I'm just going to re-hit on the three biggest takeaways here. When you're trying to understand the purpose of your module, and this is going to be an overtime evolution. Like, you may not understand it early on when you're building your module. You're going to understand it better as you work out the details of your module. But the big thing is, does it help you decide what's in and what's out of your module? Does it help you decide what has to be in your interface to make it an essential solution and what is extraneous? You need a good guiding principle that tells you how the module is supposed to work so that you, and if other people end up contributing to it, they know what makes sense here and what doesn't. And that's super important. It's a kind of a leadership thing. Does your module have single exclusive responsibility? The single responsibility principle is super important for modular design because otherwise you're going to be muddled between modules. Either your module is going to have a muddled purpose because it's going to have multiple responsibilities, or you're going to have a muddled decision about, well, does it go into module A or module B? They both kind of do similar things. They overlap a little bit. I don't know. And then you're going to end up with like knockdown, drag out fights with the rest of your team trying to figure out where things go. Don't do that. And the last one is it an essential solution? And again, I really like this concept of essence and artifact. I've been thinking about this for 20 years now. You really want to think hard about, well, how do I make this module relevant in 10 or 20 years? What is the essential problem I'm solving? And how can I do it in a way that, in principle, this could be used in 10 or 20 years and it would still be good and useful? When you do that, you know that you've got an extremely well-honed purpose. You've got a well-honed understanding of what it is. And just by justifying to someone, this is something that could be relevant in 10 years, you have to have that explanation of why it would be relevant in 10 years. And that shows that you've got a clear, focused purpose about where this fits in not just the current fad of technology, but within the essence of what's possible with technology. So with that, I'll say thank you so much for spending your valuable time with me once again. And remember, all problems are solvable with enough knowledge.